Adena Sampson, welcome to Being. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Patrick, for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you today.
Yes, I'm so excited. So, checking out your work, you know what? Reflecting on the podcast, actually, this is episode 41, and I was just reflecting on it. The through line seems to be I attract people who've gone through major transformations in their lives, and they have turned it into their purpose in some way. So they're giving back through some of the transformation that they've gone through. And I think you're no exception with the book you've written and the work you do. So I wanted to begin with sort of what has your story been? What have the major obstacles been in your life? And what have you overcome to bring you to the place you are now?
It's a loaded question.
It's a big one, right? It's a big one. You got to start big.
I know. I'll start big and simple at the same time.
Okay.
I'm grateful, thankful, blessed. Growing up, grateful to have an amazing family. Not always easy, and like many of us, how do you say this lightly or nicely? We all have our own issues, right? And we come from where we come from, and a lot of that was survival running through my family. Okay, and our family lineage. And of course, we don't always just pass down our physical traits. We pass down, our emotional aspects, our coping mechanisms even, right? So, grateful, thankful, blessed, grew up overseas, was able to have a wonderful experience by, learning about other cultures and whatnot. And at the same time, coming from, both my parents coming from a broken home, severely. And of course, addictions, running in the family as well. And, really, if I just fast forward, it's been at least, almost 12 years now. No joke. And I'm just now coming out at the end of it. No joke, fighting for my life for the last 12 years.
Wow.
Severe chronic illness mainly, which of course stems though from a lot of what took me a while to understand and learn how I might have, contributed or created some of this, due to my upbringing. Excruciating heartbreak that came, alongside it, emotionally, from many, many avenues, and of course, financial devastation as well. So we've got a triple hitter, not just once, twice, three times, but not also separate. And I think the reason I state that is to circle back around is that so many people, if they weren't dealing with something prior to COVID, let's just use this as the example because this is our present moment, they are now.
Yes, exactly.
If it wasn't a health issue, then they've lost a loved one, whether that be through the death, right, of a loved one, and or through a divorce, through a breakup. Maybe they're losing their home, right, or they've already gone through that. So I think that like many of us, I think because I spent the last 12 years truly fighting for my life and in a space and place where it affected me on a cognitive issue, neurologically, physically, emotionally, on such a level that I was unclear. I would sit back and there was a lot of things I could not do where I felt that I was watching my life go by. I thought that maybe I had missed my boat. And coming back to what you said, I think right now is not only did I did not miss my boat like many of us. This is why I came to realize that where it is I've been, I had to go through in all of the angst and all of the humanness. Let's just say that because I'm real. When I say that I'm raw and I'm real, I am, and there's a reason for it. Not everybody likes it. That's okay. I'm not here to please everybody. Although that took me a long time to realize that, right, Patrick?
Me too.
So a part of my story was really to learn how to love me, to stop seeking outside myself for validation. Things that, again, I maybe longed for in some of what I didn't maybe felt that I got or when I was younger. Again, when we're younger, we're so, as children, we absorb things much easily. I've always been a sensitive individual. So whether or not this was the absolute truth, my truth, what I was experiencing was that of, the outcast and how do I deal with that? And then, coping mechanisms that came with that. So yeah, I think right now, my biggest, amazement is that this has been a horrific year for so many people. And yet it's all relative. I can say that it's been one of the best years I have had in the last 12 years. And that's only because I had to shift my perspective, heal so much within me, and go, okay, it's not that this isn't as bad as anyone else. It's not that I have any extra resources or that I'm not affected. It's that I've already been there. I've been there. I've done that. I'm still there. And so, Patrick, I think so many people expect that. They think that you're either born with confidence, right? They think that this is just something you either have or you don't. And I think that that's not the case. It's called rolling with the punches. The only way out is through. It's moving through the adversity.
Yes.
And the only way to truly understand how to deal with that when life throws you what life does is to really go through moments where life does throw you what it does. And it's like you're being wielded in the moment. So the only way out is through. You can't expect to have that in your life or understand how to navigate what we're currently going through right now if you're not willing just to go through it, which is the uncomfortability that most of us don't want to feel. So I know that was a little long-winded. I get a little, as you can see, very passionate.
I love it. I love your passion. I'm the same way. And there's so much there that you mentioned that resonates so deeply with me and mirrors my path, frankly. And even further than that, I think there's a through line here of everybody's path on some level. You have to go through the fire. You have to have the dark night of the soul. And I think, like you mentioned, COVID has catalyzed that in many ways, where people who were sort of going through the motions on autopilot, living unconsciously, have sort of been forced to look at their own situations, what they might have been ignoring, some pain, some trauma from early childhood, and all that is coming to the surface, whether they like it or not, which has been challenging for a lot of people. Although I think it's also necessary and it's a good thing, and it will be a good thing moving forward because we can't continue to live the way we've been living as a species. Obviously, we're pushing environmental boundaries, we're pushing geopolitical boundaries. It's like everything is getting pushed to the max, and there's going to be a breaking point very soon if we don't make some fundamental changes. And I think it starts with the individual. So taking care of your own backyard, for example, there's so many things you said there that I want to mention, but one of them that really resonated with me is your illness. I'm not sure if you're willing to sort of go into that a little further, but how it relates our physical body to how we're thinking, how we're feeling, and how those are related. Because when you encounter Western medicine, like I grew up in North America, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about your body having wisdom or storing trauma or, any of the emotional stuff. It's all, head and academia. And so I want to ask you about, how did you discover what the relationship was between maybe your trauma, your emotional wounds, and your physical illness?
So, so my illness. So I was misdiagnosed for many, many years. Actually, I went about 5 years being misdiagnosed. If it's 12 years ago, this, I guess, started back in 2010, because we're, 21 right now, yeah. And, growing up, I will state, though, that even as I grew up, I was sick quite a bit, as a kid, just something that it, kind of tended to have more, catch everything that was going around and whatnot. And so I started having a lot of hormonal issues. It's just the whole thing kind of just collapsed upon me, right? So a lot of times we think that, to answer your question, that one physical ailment or illness, we look to that area to say, okay, what's the problem? And yet we're missing the holistic approach, the whole body, mind, body, spirit approach, how we got to this space and place. So twofold, Western medicine has its place. Grateful, thankful, blessed for the technologies that we have, and some of the doctors that are thinking outside of the box, doing what they do. Hence, really the only reason why I'm here today, because Western medicine at the time didn't cut it for me. I went in and out of medical, offices, doctors' offices, with doctors didn't know how to treat me. A lot of them, thinking that maybe I was making this up some way, shape, or form, okay? And not just the doctors, but also close family members. And as you can be aware, when this happens, this is not just affects you physically, but then it becomes a major, PTSD issue. So I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, which the CDC still does not recognize, in 2015.
Wow.
And again, prior to misdiagnosed with everything from irritable bowel to, whatever it was, nobody can pinpoint it, right? And then whatever it was, we would slap a Band-Aid on it and then it wouldn't get better.
Right.
And during this process, it was horrific. it affects you in a way, even neurologically, especially Lyme disease, where my brain was completely inflamed.
Mm.
Okay, I was having chronic inflammation off the charts. Okay, which normally you would see in cancer patients. Okay, and I speak to this because it's not just Lyme disease that's misunderstood right now. It's pretty much what we would deem mystery illness, anything that's autoimmune reactive, like for example MS, lupus, okay, Crohn's. To circle even back to today with COVID, it's a shame that what we're going through is what we're going through, because it's really no small deal. However, I do see a silver lining, because now we are finally medical. It's taken a pandemic for people to say, oh, wow, maybe the immune system is working differently than we originally noted.
Yes.
Those of us that have suffered for many years have been dealing with the cytokine storm, which in essence is just an immune reactivity, right? Severe, that is full body inflammation, which again sets off a cascade of all these reactions that you're now seeing with COVID long haulers.
Yep.
So yes, it's a mind, body, spirit aspect. I've always been committed to my growth. Probably when I was about 17 or so, it was just, I've always been seeking knowledge and wisdom and courses and classes, because that's just, there's always been an innate something inside of me that knew that there was something more. And I love to read. And so from a personal development standpoint, it was never a new thing. It was just, as you know, always a daily ongoing process. No matter how much you think you've worked on your familial issues, for example, 20 years later, you're laughing at yourself going, you've got to be kidding me. You've tried everything. And here you are realizing that this is a big part of what kept you sick. So I think it's just more of multiple touches. Things don't hit you right away. Even from a spiritual new age community aspect, as a person who, like yourself, is really, for me, authenticity is key, right? Not always pretty, far from perfect. Most people can't handle the truth. Let's just be honest.
Yep.
That doesn't always make it easy for some of us who are sensitive individuals, and how to navigate through life, initially. But what it does do is give you the ability to say, okay, what I saw even in the, I say spiritual community, was even something that I felt lacked authenticity.
Yeah.
It was, hey, do you want to move through this? Hey, let's love everybody. Yes, that sounds wonderful. But I felt that there was a lack of humanness. Once, I got past that self-righteous place that everybody seems to get to when you're, on a path trying to, do that inner work, I realized that there was pieces of me that I was, my shadow self, that I wasn't fully owning.
Yeah.
And embodying, like so many of us are taught to do, which is to disown it. It doesn't exist. And I think that's part of the problem. So, again, another long-winded answer for you.
Yeah, well, there's so much here. There's so much richness to your story and my story, and everybody, that's listening. We are going through similar things. We have to confront those darker parts of ourselves that, like you said, we're taught to ignore, or that are inconvenient, or will bring shame upon the family, or whatever the excuse is. And then we push them into the unconscious, and they end up manifesting in ways that are not positive, like illness or addiction or disease or depression or anxiety, all these ways that they manifest that Western medicine doesn't recognize. Like you said, Western medicine is fantastic for treating acute situations, emergencies, traumas, amazing, like world class, but they're terrible at long chronic illness, because we don't study the whole body over time. Right. And so this holistic approach that you're talking about is so important. And it begins with taking responsibility and looking at your darkness and uncovering your shadow, because those are the things will manifest in ways that are negative affecting you. So I love this. Go ahead.
To cookie off of that, let's just talk about that, because really it's kind of classified a lot of times as mental illness, right?
Right.
And again, I don't have a problem saying that either. It's just that labels, I don't think, do us. I've never really been one for labels. Yeah. And also, this is something almost everybody I know deals with, whether they admit to it or not.
For sure.
So you're right. The fact that we're not looking at that, or not in as much depth as we should as to what does cause our depression, our anxiety, right? Our codependency, the things that we seek to for solace, or to numb out, like you said, with the addictions.
Yeah.
Again, this is a big part of what I love about what you do for your work. I love that, 12-step conscious, recovery is key. And it's interesting. I think that we a lot of us come from that background, and it just manifests in different ways for us.
Right.
But there are so many different ways we can address this as individuals when we're realizing that as adults, we have underlying programming that once may have served us in childhood to protect us in that moment in time, or at least that's what we thought. And it's running automatically that if we're not aware of this, we don't catch, and we wonder why we're creating the same relationships. And I mean, this is across the board, right? Not just in romantic, especially in our business, because we are reflecting that which is all that we know was from the dysfunction growing up, was from the relationship we saw with mom and dad and how they interacted. And of course, they were replaying the same thing that their parents were. So it's not necessarily their fault or our fault. However, it is so very much our responsibility to recognize that and say, okay, now what are we going to do about it?
Yes, that's exactly it. And this is so resonant with a lot of the guests I talk to, frankly. The same message comes through, is that, we're born these kind of blank slates, these neuroplastic, innocent, light-being children. And that by design, evolutionarily, that was an advantage because we moved to so many different environments, right? So we had to learn from our environment, the people that are taking care of us, our parents, our guardians, on how to survive in every environment, right? So over time, whatever we learned from them became our programming, and that whether good or bad, over when we grow up, we never scrutinize it on, okay, well, are those beliefs that I'm holding sacred, are they useful still? Or, these patterns, these thought patterns, are they serving me anymore? And few of us ever ask those questions, and so we reach adulthood and we wonder why our lives are not working out the way we want, but we've never looked under the hood to really see what's going on there, right? And this is, again, as a through line that comes through on a lot of people I talk to, a lot of clients and a lot of podcast guests. So I'm so glad you're resonating back the same message, because it's so powerful. And one of the goals of this podcast is make it really practical for people. Like, what can people do if they're just sort of waking up to this and like, okay, well, I don't know what my shadow is. I don't know what my unconscious trauma is. What do I do? What would you say to somebody who's in that position?
Sure. Well, just to also go over what you just said, I don't think you're right. It's not that we're trying to reinvent the wheel. I think we're realizing there's a common thread here.
Yeah, totally.
And it's time to talk about it, and that people are waking up to it, even if, for me, I think it's important to say that it's important to be a bridge. Again, how do we relate to those that are realizing that they are, let's just say that they're unhappy in their lives. This is simple, right?
Yeah.
Not understanding why. And a big reason of that is saying, hey, this is what I want in my life. But there's always this seeking or trying to attain something outside of ourselves. And again, I think the first recognition to answer that question is to realize nothing is outside of yourself, of ourself, period.
Totally.
And yet again, it's easier said than done. So I think for me, a big part of the work that I'm doing, and I think even you're doing, is that we know that there's no quick fix. There's no magic pill. Okay?
No, there isn't.
And to have anybody expect otherwise, I think is again, it's a non-truth. So let's talk about what is the truth. This is what we believed growing up. But again, it's because there's been this kind of, how do you say it, collective truth, which is a lie, that we're not good enough.
Yes. Totally.
That is really the root of the problem. Let's be honest, that we are not good enough, whether or not we're conscious of that, whether or not that even seems, for some of our personalities too, there can be a very subtle, this is what I found for me.
Me too.
Was that there was subtle codependency. You wouldn't have even, if you looked at my personality and the way it is, it's real. This is not false or fake. However, for me to find that codependency took me, how many 40-something years to discover?
Yeah.
Because again, it was so subtle, because we are told again, and we're not only told growing up and having that passed down generationally, but what you see in the media, what you see right now in billboards, what we're trying to say is, you're not good enough. This is what you need. This is what we sell to everybody.
Totally.
And I think the way, some of us are showing up now is saying, look, I'm not trying to say that I'm better than you. I'm not. I'm not trying to say that I'm some guru. I'm not. Am I an expert? Sure, you can consider me and yourself an expert, but only because we've lived it. We've been there. And we're still there. I'm not
Hallelujah.
trying to pretend that all of a sudden, my life is it better? Absolutely, because of the changes I've made.
Yeah.
However, this is, to answer your question, a daily practice. So it's a choice. It's saying, hey, this is not one day at a time for me in my journey. It was moment to moment.
100%.
It was understanding that, how am I present with where I'm at? How do I surrender and accept what is, which is really not easy when you're in a state of illness or whatever your circumstance. I think we need to realize that we're not our circumstances.
Yes.
And we have to break it down and almost clear away what is not who it is that we've been taught and told, to realize, again, what you said, the true beauty of who it is we are, the innocence of how we were born into this world.
Mm-hmm. And
again, when we're in the world that we live in and what it is we experience, again, that is not easy, but absolutely possible. So, I don't want to, rush too much into this, but when you ask about how we can move forward, I was able to channel all this into a book recently.
Awesome.
Okay, this year. And this wasn't of me. This, like everything else, and especially as a musician, you understand it comes through us, right?
Totally.
And it's something that it's on purpose so much that there's nothing that can be questioned. This is a must. It took so much courage and vulnerability to share my story, not for me, but so it wouldn't be for naught. So that others can understand, number one, you are not alone, right? They are not alone. Whatever they're going through, please understand that you can make it through, especially when you talk about the dark night of the soul, when you realize that many of us do at times where, what's the purpose of being here? Why even do it? We don't talk about that enough as well. It doesn't make, you don't have to be some person, whatever it is we project, that some person is willing to give up. That's not always the way it works for some of us. We're in a point where it almost makes more sense that you're not just surviving, you're not even existing.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem, and you get into this dark space, which is really difficult to get out of. And I realized that I told my story, and then I came up with 9 principles.
Awesome.
Mainly to answer the questions you're asking, to say, how do I break this down? How am I still standing? How can I do this different? I'm not reinventing the wheel, but how can I say, look, if we understand that we have a choice and we can make that daily in moments, we get to choose and then re-choose. It's constant practice.
Yes.
It's about when we realize that we have, maybe, how do we say it? I don't really think that anything is ever a mistake. I believe everything happens for a reason, okay? But let's just say we realize that we've screwed up or something's taken place or we're not proud of the way we've behaved or whatever, because it happens and it's going to continue to happen.
Yeah.
It's a matter of saying, okay, I recognize it, and in this moment I can do 2 things. I can pretend that it's not happening and completely be in denial that I'm a part of the problem. Or I can say, okay, I'm a part of the problem. What am I going to do about it? But most of us end up beating ourselves up in the moment. And we completely, I know we hear about self-love so often, and yet that is such, again, it's the key to getting back to who it is you are as an authentic being. To being okay with who you are, irrelevant of what anybody says, does, thinks. And to live your life in alignment with that. Again, not easy, but I've realized that from my journey, I've been able to put together some things that I feel are daily habits and practices that we can, attest to. But again, this is in chunks of where the principles are and why I think they're important.
Yes, that concept of life is happening for us, not to us, is so fundamental, because it makes it takes us to responsibility. And if you can look at life, why, okay, this is happening to me, not drop into victim mode. It's like, why me, poor me, look at all the pain I'm going through. Okay, why is this happening? What can I learn from it? Why is this situation here? Why is this person here? Why am I reacting this way? They're all indicators to help us grow and to help us evolve our consciousness, which I believe is the only purpose, is for us to grow and learn and continue to experience more of life. That's it. Nothing more than that.
I agree, 100%. That's it.
That's it. And
what's the lesson? Number 1, what are you learning? What are you learning? What are you learning?
There you go. All right. And if you can have the humility and the courage to continue to ask that question, then you dive into, okay, how am I how am I responsible for this situation? Right. And you can ask that of every situation, even if you're in an argument or a situation where you are convinced the other person is 99% wrong. It's still, what is the 1% that I'm contributing? Right. And if you can own that 1% and really show up humbly, then you will always be present. You will always be engaged with life, and you will always be evolving. Right? Does that resonate for you?
Absolutely. And again, not always easy, but again, Are we really wanting life to be easy? Most of us say, yeah, we would love that. But again, how would we learn then?
Yeah.
And where would the richness be? Because once you do learn to own these parts within us, and what the lesson is, and what the other person is reflecting to you, because we are all mirrors of each other, right?
Totally.
That really is the only lesson, and you grow as a person, and that shines through who it is that you are and how you show up. And it's amazing how your life then reflects that. How people fall away that no longer are meant to be there, because there's now a frequency or a vibration that you're resonating at that is not in judgment of who they are and where they're at. It's just no longer in alignment.
Totally.
That's okay. And I think that's also hard. I think a lot of times people may not want to start on this journey or have a hard time with where they're at because of the fear of losing the ones that they love. And that's a valid fear, sure.
100%.
And yet it's still fear. And so the only way out of that fear is to move through it.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
And I think you nailed it earlier about how our culture influences us to look externally for validation. I worked in advertising for almost 20 years, and that's basically what we do is we manipulate people to think they're not enough, so they'll buy the products that they don't actually need. That's what advertising is.
Yeah.
Right? And so the culture has programmed and conditioned us to believe that we're not enough and we're not powerful. And it's bullshit, frankly. Right.
Yes,
and so the day you take responsibility and you take your power back, that's when you can begin to live in full expression, right? So coming back to what we said earlier about when we're born, we're these innocent light beings and we get programmed. That is your truest essence is what you're born with. And you continually get programmed and conditioned away from it, which causes so much pain, right? And for me, it showed up as alcohol was my numbing out agent, right? Because I was like, oh man, I'm following all the rules of what society tells me to do, and I'm still confused and not happy and not fulfilled. Like, what's wrong? It must be me. So, and you blame yourself and you beat yourself up and you get drunk and you do anything to numb the pain, right? But once you realize, okay, well, wait a minute, maybe there's some societal influences here that are not serving me. Maybe I learned some stuff when I was a kid that's no longer not true, first of all, and no longer serving me. How can I go in and check that stuff out and really analyze, scrutinize, is this working for me? And if it's not, let that shit go. And that could be jobs, that could be marriages, that could be people, that could be addictions. It's like so many things that you have to let go. This is a process of removal, not adding on. Right.
And again, that's where a lot of us get stuck though, right? Because then we know we have to let something go, but society says you don't let a job go until you find another one.
Yes, totally.
Now, I'm not saying that's good, bad, and different. I'm saying that's what society says. Now, the question is it true?
Yes.
So I think that you're right, is really going back to understand what our underlying subconscious beliefs are, where we develop, and then really just having more of like a curious.
Yes.
When you're curious, it's more enjoyable because then you're just curious. So it's more of, well, what if, like, is this really true? Is this really the definitive? Or is it just that I'm believing that, again, not necessarily of my own fault, but because this is what we've been told, this is what we've been taught, this is what is dictated across the board. And so again, that's not easy when this is what we see. And also when you decide to go against the grain, sometimes again you get as you see very clearly, you get slack for that, and you have to have the courage to be willing to go out on that limb.
Yeah.
And for those of us that seek that validation, again, which I think is most of us unconsciously, because we're all learning for that innate ability within us. It's built into our psyche, right? Our belief system is our ability to belong, our need to belong. And so if we don't belong, what does that mean? That means I'm alone. I'm an outcast. What do we do with that? And that's not always an easy feeling to deal with as well. But again, when you face that and you're courageous enough to just be curious about it, you step into that confidence through learning and understanding. And when you talk about reclaiming your power, that's my fifth principle: is reclaim your power.
Awesome.
And I would have to say that's one of the biggest ones for me because I was giving away my power without even realizing it.
Most of us are all the time.
But from that subtle nature where you might not always catch it, you're going, wait a second. You may not be blaming somebody blatantly, although a lot of people do. It's kind of like, how are we still giving our power away? Maybe it's because we're overgiving as a sensitive, kind individual. And maybe we're doing that for a reason that we're not. Is it the need to be needed? What is it? Where is this coming from? Again, from a space and place and what we saw in the relationships growing up and what we thought was love. And so that we create this in our, other relationships and we are giving away the very power that the moment we decide to take it back, our whole life changes.
Totally.
But we're afraid to take the power back, aren't we? We're afraid to take that responsibility because what will that mean? Things will have to change, won't they?
Things will have to change, and taking responsibility is scary. And once you start getting the things that you want, then you have more to lose. So there's all sorts of nuances going on here. The other thing is
we're afraid of losing. We're afraid of that loss, like you said.
Totally, yeah, totally. Well, we're tribal beings. We're tribal primates, right? And so being outcast from the tribe means death when you're in the wild, right? But we all crave this sense of belonging and a sense of certainty, right? Which keeps us looking externally for validation, right? Where there is no certainty. There's almost no certainty in this life, right? So if you can really feel into that and just like let go of trying to control, because we're sold more security, more safety, like this is what the government does for us, right? So it's this paternal figure that's constantly controlling us and like, oh, we'll take care of you and keep you safe because they know on a deep level that's what we crave as human beings. But it's never real safety. Right? It's never real certainty. The only certainty you can find is the trust in your deepest essence, which comes from looking inward, right? And so when you do discover that deepest essence and you embody it and you grow it, then you can go out in the world with that foundation. Like you say, you can be attacked by people and you're not going to get knocked over because you've built that foundation of trust in your deepest essence. Right?
It's a solid foundation, and you're right. Yes. Trust is at the core, like bingo,
at the core.
Right on it. That's it. And it's mastering uncertainty is what you're trying to say. But how do you do that? Well, again, you have to be willing to brave the storm. It's almost you're really wanting to try to find peace within the storm, which sounds like a dichotomy because it is. But the only way you do that is by going within and going, okay, if we are accepting, like you just said, that life is just. There is no certainty. And the more we strive for that stability, the more we strive for that certainty, anytime any of the access has just slightly shifted, we are in a state of anxiety. We are in a state of depression. We are in a state of going, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's only natural. It's just that I think the more we can balance ourselves out by realizing that we are uncomfortable, there is going to be uncomfortability and getting used to the uncomfortability. Like you said, that's the way you do it, is really the only way I've learned to do it is from being in it and going, okay, so now the next storm comes and this time you've been in it, you've already been uncomfortable. You kind of know what that looks like. And now you've got these nuggets, these gifts, these things that when it comes again, it may sway you, but maybe it won't sway you as far this time.
Yes.
Then the next time, the same thing. So when COVID hits, it's like some of us who have already been there, done that, and I say that lightly, I'm not trying to discount what we've been through. It's like, okay, wow, I was really wanting to come out. I've been hidden for so long. I've been isolated for so long, but okay, we've done this before, so we just got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
We just stay the course.
Yes.
With the extra tools in our pocket that we now have, right?
Exactly. Well, this is why I recommend meditation, because what it does for me, it's a myriad of benefits, obviously, but one of the primary ones is grounding me into that deep essence and trust in my inner being every day and reminding me about it. So, we call it a practice because that's what it is. It's practice for when you go out in the world and you are challenged by life and its complexity and other people, and they throw you off. It's how quickly can you regain that centeredness. Right. And you know how to get back there if you've practiced it. If you haven't practiced it, you're out in the wind at the behest of the elements, right? You get blown around. And so it's grounding that presence in a practice. So when you are challenged, you know how to get back there and keep your center, right? That's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes there's again, number one, shift your perspective. Another big reason why I thought it was important to have this principle is that sometimes we can think that meditation means something that it doesn't. Meditation doesn't always need to look like I'm in a quiet, dark room saying Om, which is okay if that's what that is for you. Mm-hmm. But for so many, people, it can be walking in nature and having this just an ability to get out into nature in the negative ions where we're grounded and away from all the instant gratification busyness of what we think is important, what we are taught and told success is, to just be. Your whole podcast is called being,
That's
right?
it.
Not doing.
Exactly.
And yet that's what we're taught. We are taught to do instead of be. And I think there's a very distinct difference between doing and being, and it takes a little while to understand the difference and to shift that, but nature is one of those things. Maybe for you it's playing music. Maybe, to be honest, it's as mundane as concentrating as the task in front of you, which is actually not just there's a difference between being in the present moment and then also your presence and what that can bring when you are present with somebody.
Totally.
All of that, like you said, requires slowing down.
Yes.
Requires clearing out, not adding.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, when we're talking about everybody wanting something different in their lives, or they want something that they can feel better about, whatever that is, that only comes from, like you said, removing the things that no longer serve us so that we make room for what does. Mm-hmm. And for me, washing the dishes, no joke, these little tasks, it's like taking it one step at a time, one task at a time. Overwhelm is something that a lot of us feel, that I know that I've dealt with quite a bit.
Yep.
And that comes because I'm a visionary and I can see the bigger picture. Sometimes life will show you, hey, this is where you're meant to be over here. And you go, wow, that's great. And then you realize there's quite a bit to it. It's almost impossible to actually get started and to keep going and to continue what you're supposed to do to reach those goals if you see the big picture, because the first thing you do is freak out, get overwhelmed, and then you stop dead in your tracks. Mm-hmm. Again, you're not certain. Okay, I'm going to procrastinate, or whatever it is that your coping mechanism is. We each have different ways of dealing with it. So for me, it's going, okay, I'm overwhelmed right now. Let me take a step back. I got to go for a walk. For me, it's moving my body physically too. It's for me, you can see I'm animated. If it gets stuck, I can't be stoic. I will feel it, and that's actually when we talk about what happens when we get overwhelmed. Well, then we feel emotions, which I believe we're taught that are bad, which is incorrect. Let's take anger. Okay, anger has been a big one for me most of my life. Okay, and I'm honest about it because I've owned this space within me. I don't believe I'm an angry person. No. But it was a big part of what was protecting me, or at least what I thought was protecting me. When I'm backed in a corner and I feel that I've given too much, or someone may be taking advantage of that, I'm going to get angry, And I think that it's important to realize that when we accept these human pieces within us, angry is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you can maybe fuel it in the correct way, right? Where you're not harming others. And that's not always easy. But I've realized that it's actually quite funny too, when you realize that you're the one, again, when you're reclaiming your power and realize that I was giving it away because I'm the one getting angry. I'm the one that's responsible for that. What am I going to do then when it happens again? I'm not going to berate myself. Oh, you got angry. Now you're angry and you're berating yourself.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I'm angry. And how am I going to own that to where I'm not judging it? I've owned it to where, okay, look, I'd like to maybe react a different way, but I get to then choose in that moment to reclaim my power. I get to pause. I get to observe. I get to witness. I get to expand my awareness. And then I get to release what no longer serves me. And maybe then come back at it where I can see things from a different perspective. I think so many of us, like I said, we judge emotions as if they are wrong, right, or indifferent. And I bring up anger because I think that's a big one for many people, where we are taught and told that that's not right. And again, my belief is that I think that is incorrect, and that it's exactly what we're here to feel. And if we can channel that through, understand why we're feeling it, what the lesson is, like you said, we're here to learn, then we can not have it bottled up inside of us that would get us sick, right? That would come out in different areas or ways. If we understand what's the root of our anger, why are you so angry? Why am I so angry? Where is it stemming from? Because my needs weren't met. Why? What needs do I need to be met? Am I speaking that into fruition? Am I asking for the help I need? Probably not. I know I couldn't for so long. Mm-hmm. There's so many reasons, and I think each individual is unique because of where they've been and where they've come from. And yet we are all the same in the fact that we were born into innocence. we had this non-truth kind of, blanketed across society and across, our familial backgrounds, no matter what your race, nationality, where you're from. And in some way, shape, or form at the core, there's a piece of us that feels we're not good enough. And if we can realize that that's not the truth and that we are good enough and really love ourselves and the pieces within us, like the anger, like these pieces that we're taught to discount, then here's the big piece that happens and what ripples out into our reflections in society is that when you no longer judge yourself, you no longer judge another human being. That is not your first reaction. People then feel safe in your presence, which really, let's be honest, what does everybody want? They want to be seen, heard, and understood, period. And when they're not, we get angry, we get depressed, we get all these things. I mean, I think things are much more simple than we make them. And if we break them down into bite-sized pieces, and it's easier to navigate, adversity and, uncertainty, which is where we find ourselves now. And again, it's something that is not, we can't expect that never to be again. And I think our expectations play a big role as well. What are we expecting? And what are we measuring success on? These things are key because, again, we have an identity crisis. Is really what it is.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. There's so much there I'd love to ask you more about. But a couple of things stood out for me. I think you nailed it on the emotions being, because we judge our emotions. We judge ourselves when we have emotions, and emotions are they're our guidance system. They're there for a reason. They're there to inform us on something that's going on inside of us that needs attention. And sometimes that's anger. And I think it's important to recognize that there's a couple of different forms of anger. At least this is what I understand. One where, something inside of us is being triggered, be it a trauma, an emotional wound, or a survival mechanism where we're like, no, that's not right. And anger comes out, right? Something unresolved inside of us. Or the other type of anger is more coming from a place of love, when we recognize something in the world that we value is being harmed. Say, example, like an animal is being harmed, or a woman is being abused, or whatever it might be. The environment is being overrun. There's an anger that comes from a place of love. Something I love is being harmed, and I feel angry about it, right? So there's a distinction there between those two. But I think you nailed it, that the emotions that we feel are there for a reason, and if we can listen to them and distill the wisdom from them, we'll be much better off, rather than trying to push them away or judge them or shame ourselves, because then they just come back in another way. They're going to manifest in some way because that's speaking to some message inside of us that we need to listen to. And most of us are too distracted in our minds to ever listen to it because we haven't cultivated that stillness we were talking about earlier. And maybe that's meditation, maybe that's walking in nature, maybe whatever it is for you, cultivating that stillness inside of yourself is so important, because then you can listen to the wisdom that your emotions are there to impart. Would you agree with that?
Speaking of which, especially when you say listen, because it's not just, are we listening? Are we present with another human being in our lives? And again, all of us are guilty of not being that.
Yep.
But the more we can cultivate that within ourselves, the more we're able to reflect that out. And then again, the more presence is reflected back to us, which is what we've been longing for forever, feeling like it's been eluding us.
Yes.
But listening to whatever your belief is, whether that is God, the universe, your higher self. Again, for me, it's not a matter of what it is you believe, because we all, again, have the right to believe what we want. It's just tapping into something bigger than yourself. I think that's maybe the basic way of saying this. For me, the biggest shift to most recently in my life, and specifically this last year through COVID, the last few years, is that, we're taught sometimes to, especially if we're talking about goals or what we're creating in our lives, to drive forward, to make it happen. Okay, and I'm not negating that. I think life's a dance. I think it's both destiny and choice, right? Which is why I believe everything happens for a reason, and yet we do create our reality. We always have this, I think we have this rhetoric that it's one or the other.
Yes, I agree with that. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah,
and I think it's a dance.
Yeah, it's both and. It's a dance. I love that. Yes. I totally agree, because I've sort of gotten caught in that polarity, but it's neither. It's not a duality. It's both. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think, again, if we can shift our perspective, even from that simple thing that, hey, it's not that I'm just creating my reality. It's also that everything happens for a reason. Why am I so stuck that I'm on one side or the other? Again, it's irrelevant if it's politics or something else. Where's the middle ground, for heaven's sakes, here? Have we lost our minds? Clearly, yeah. And the thing is, it's a good thing that we lose our minds, because again, that is part of the problem. Part of what we're talking about is that presence requires stillness. We're afraid to slow down because if we slow down, we feel like we might miss something. But yet, it's the other way around.
Yes.
And what that does too is tapping into more of a bridge between our heart and the mind. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times, we know that heart math has done, research for a long time about our heart being really the core and the center of how it is that we navigate. And that's really the place of the truth of being at peace. Not just, what we think can create a lot of distortion, can create a lot of, again, untruths and or projection. So we have to be mindful about that. Mm-hmm. And I think being present in the moment, being present with yourself, slowing down is such a big importance, so that we can hear our intuition, our higher self. We can hear what the universe, again, synchronicities. What is synchronicities? How does that happen? Some of us experience it regularly, others maybe not, but that's okay. You can too. It's there. It's innate within you. It's just that you haven't tapped into it yet. Yes. So it's not that you're without. And I think that's also something that I think people feel that maybe I don't have this. Well, no, of course you do. You have it. It's just, again, practice, as you keep saying, practice, practice. That when I've been following from the prompts that I get, and then I've been taking action. Yes. Where I used to just do it the opposite way, and I just thought that I was trying to make my way through the world. But pushing your way upstream is way different than everything literally opening up and meeting you and your life being absolutely abundant, because you are listening, you're tapped in and slowed down enough that you get the sign. It'll come through many different facets. Everybody's different, whatever resonates with you. A sign on the road, a bumper sticker. Some of us are more, we can hear downloads, right? We can hear voices. Hey, we can admit to that. But that's where this comes from. Again, when we say that it's not of us, it's through us. When we listen, it's amazing. The people that show up and go, wow, I really needed to hear that, or wow, thank you. And you went, whoa, I'm happy to be the conduit.
Yes.
Meaning I just listened, I followed through, and look what happened in my relationships and my lives and these opportunities. And you're living a life that's way more in alignment, but also exciting.
Totally. I think you nailed it there. That's another form of programming and conditioning in our environment, where if we're not busy, if we're not constantly doing something, struggle, hustle, we're losing competitive advantage against our competitor. And in a capitalist society, you can't lose competitive advantage, otherwise you'll suffer and you won't be enough and all those things. But the opposite is true, in the sense that the more we can slow down and tune into our higher selves and allow that stillness to inform our action, then we can take aligned action, I call it, right? And so once you tune into that deepest essence and you know clearly what the next steps can be, you can be far more effective in a quarter of the time, right? And have more energy, more flow, more fulfillment, more success, more money, whatever you want, with a quarter of the effort, right? And it's counterintuitive for our society, which celebrates like caffeinated logic, productivity, all that shit. It's like hustle. Whoever works the hardest is going to win the game, right? And that's just another program of our society. One other thing that you mentioned earlier about giving your power away is, or taking back your power, tuning into like a higher power, I think is what you said, or something higher than yourself. The danger with that, and this is true for me because I grew up Roman Catholic, Irish Catholic, is that it can be co-opted for a power game, right? So they can say, okay, well, you need to go through God in order to find your power, right? And I disagree with that. I call it what you will, God, source, universe, whatever it is. It's higher than you, but you're also connected to it. You are it, right? So it's not like, right.
Yes. So you're talking about organized religion and conformism, really.
Exactly.
Is what you're saying.
Yes.
Again, we all, I'm authentic, and everybody gets to believe what they believe, but I'm in 100% agreement with you that it is what it is for everyone. However, a lot of people who maybe in some of these religions and whatnot, again, a lot of them are fear-based, okay? A lot of them are telling you what to do, when to do, and how, and that's where you have to realize what your own truth is. There's nothing wrong with your belief in God. It's just, as humans, what are we saying about it? Because again, really, that makes no sense. So I think
Yeah.
there needs to be a separation between that side of things. And you're right. We are, the Taoists believe that we are, 100%, God is within us, around us. Everything is us. It's flow. Yes, we are God's children. But whichever way you want to believe in this, as long as we do that, you're right. That's not to our detriment. That's not from a judgmental, shaming, blaming, judging place.
Yeah.
I think that's really what I meant is that, there's something that's not, I guess, from the ego. From our ego self. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Enough said. Yeah. Adena Sampson, you've written this beautiful book that I see behind you. I'm so excited to read it, but I know you're also a musician. And so from what I understand, you've created a soundtrack around the book as well. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. The music literally saved my life when I was going through what I went through. Right.
Me too. Me too.
And you probably know this as a musician too, is that I'd spend all day in bed, literally no joke. If I got up to make something in the kitchen, it would take all the energy I had for the day.
Wow.
And there were certain things I had to do, but I could not no longer, do my speaking, do the sales, do the work I used to do. And the music has always been, in a good way, a good coping mechanism growing up, where I had this tool to release the emotions and what it is I felt. And, in the middle of me getting sick, I did not plan on getting into the music in the way that I did. Very blessed to do very well in the Las Vegas music scene, but did not plan on it. Meaning, literally, I realized I could not do what I once did because of my cognitive ability at the time. And I had one tool that I knew could still be of service. And the way that I serve is not, again, about me, but through me. And how can I bring the music to it? And literally, it was the only time I wasn't in pain was about that 3 to 4 hours that I was on stage doing what I did. It was like I was in an altered state. So when I launched this book, and I knew this was a big part of my purpose, why I'm here to serve, right? Some people know me as the speaker, the coach, the person that's done business, entrepreneur. And some people just know me as, she's a musician, she rocks the house, this is what she does. And either way is okay, but like we spoke about before, people like to put you in a box, or they like to say, here's who you are. And the thing is, that's not my job. My job is to say, I'm not perfect, I'm not for everybody, but I know my gifts. And my gift, whether that's speaking, singing, or writing, this is my innate ability, and this is how I'm here to serve. And so I must, irrelevant of whether or not I want to.
Yes.
So with the book, what I ended up doing was making sure I gave people principles to navigate wherever it is that they are in their life, if they're suffering right now in any way, shape, or form. To tell my story so they know that they're not alone. But to also do that as an experiential, artistic, creative way, where the book will take you on a journey. And it's the road back to me. 9 principles for navigating life's unexpected twists and turns. So I want people to come on a journey with me. And what I did was I made the soundtrack so I could do both. I've got some lyrics in the first part of the book, and then the theme song at the end. So people can take their own journey to see where I was in that raw and the realness of the music. And then also, not at the end because it's an ongoing journey, but where they are now as they've read the book.
Right.
What they've experienced and learned through reading the book, and how they're going to practice that moving forward. And I just made it just available for my readers. So is really as a gift for my readers exclusively, which I thought was something different. I didn't know how that was going to work out, but so far it's been wonderful. And so just blessed to be able to take both of what I know I have to, as you know, music is a universal language, right? It's a healing tool. So some people are going to feel that on a frequency, vibrational level. Some people aren't. That's okay. But I wanted to have both so that people could have an experience,
That is so beautiful, and I resonate so deeply with that. I love it. I love that idea. I think it's perfect to represent your book in music and in words. And I just want to come back to something we talked about earlier, is this idea of purpose and coming from that deepest essence. It doesn't, as people think about purpose, I have to do one thing or I have to do one job. And it's like, no, your deepest essence expressed into the world creatively can manifest in many ways. And for you is a perfect example. It's writing, it's coaching, it's music, it's singing, but it's all coming from that same place of deepest essence to be of highest service. And that's, for me, is what purpose is. It can manifest in many ways. So
and you do the same thing, and that's what I love.
I do the same thing.
It's really wonderful because, I mean, literally, even not meeting you in person, but yet just even seeing one of your pictures that I saw,
Yeah.
I could see your vibration, your frequency, your essence of the true Patrick and who you were just from like jumping off the page.
Awesome.
And I just really dig that. So thank you for being such a beautiful reflection that showing me and everyone else that here's who we are, this is what we do, and yes.
Yes. Awesome.
You know?
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when I started into this sort of, the coaching entrepreneurial world, it's like everybody's telling me I have to niche, I have to be very specific. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm all these things. I don't want to niche, like, so this is really great to talk to you because it's really inspiring because I am, I love manifesting my purpose in many different forms, and it could be music, could be coaching, could be a podcast. And that's just how I can show up in highest service. So it really feels fulfilling for me. So thank you.
And yet, here's the way I see this is, yes, that's the Redrick out there. However, I don't see that as a niche. I feel that you have your niche, and as a conscious coach, which is, I think this is. How can you remind me what's your tagline or something?
I have a few of them. This is the whole thing.
Oh, But either way, it's in alignment. So I don't see how that is separate then, because your message is still the same. You're just using a different vehicle to express that.
There you go. Thank you for saying that. That's absolutely true. Beautiful. Adena, would you be open to sharing some music right now for the audience?
I can do that. I'd love to do that. And thank you also for the opportunity to do that.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. Let's do it.
We're going to grab the guitar here.
Okay. Can you tell us about what you're going to play first?
Sure. So I thought I'd play the theme song since it makes sense.
Awesome.
Now, I did not write this. Again, yes, this might have been planned some way, shape, or form from a purposeful perspective, right? This is why I came. But the song was written a year and a half before the book came out, and it's called The Road Back to Me.
Perfect.
So
it was the road back to the book.
Again, I thought it was fitting. And again, the road back to me, meaning road back to us, right? Our authentic self, the way we were when we came into the world. How do we get back to who it is we know we're supposed to be and how we're here to serve?
Yes.
So I thought I'd play that one since it was fitting.
Awesome.
And
I'm so excited.
Kind of go from there.
Ladies and gentlemen,
does that work for you?
Adena Sampson, take it away. Yes, it totally works.
And here we go. They told me I was failure, said you never succeed. Fool for believing, lost my will to achieve. Broken down and tired, how can this be? Not sure where to start on the road back to me. Still searching for the answers. Also seems picking up the pieces of my shattered dreams, putting together the puzzle of who I'm meant to be. One step at a time on the road back to me. Shake it. It's time to move forward, leave the past behind, open up my heart and clear my mind. Expand my horizons, looking deep inside, paint a new picture I can no longer hide. We're gonna chance to find me, my spirit set free. roll back to me. Come on, roll back to me. Come on, roll back to me. Come on, roll. Oh, I'm on my way back home. Oh yeah. Come on, roll back to me.
Wow, that was awesome. Adena Sampson, thank you so much for sharing your talent and your time and your magic. Wow, you're so powerful. You're such a powerful performer, and your voice, oh my God, and the song, well done. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Oh my
Thank
God,
you
that
so
was
much,
awesome.
Patrick.
That gave me
Truly.
chills. That totally gave me chills. Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Raw and
So
real all the way. And my favorite part was you bopping.
I was feeling it. I was totally feeling it. So The Road Back to Me is the book. You have the soundtrack for people that purchase the book. Tell us where we can find it. Where can we buy it?
AdenaSampson.com.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Easy. I'll put that in the show notes.
Just go to the website, AdenaSampson.com. Everything's there. You got the link to the book, everything from the coaching to the speaking, and just be nice to meet you. So come on by.
Awesome. Adena Sampson, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great hanging out with you, and I appreciate your wisdom and your magic and everything you're doing in the world.
Oh, you made my day. Thank you, Patrick.
Awesome. Okay, we'll talk to you real soon. Take care.